You as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Check your AM, FM listing across the country, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national airways of ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Indeed, used by over 3 million businesses for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Lots of stuff to get into. I'll be talking about the NBA in a little while. I'm watching the Brooklyn Nets beat up on the Boston Celtics last night. I'm watching James Harden drop 57. Ladies and gentlemen, he scored 30-plus for the last 17 games in which he's averaging over 40. Good Lord have mercy. So I'll be getting into all of that. And then some. Obviously, I got some NFL playoff action to get into. College basketball, Syracuse, the Orange, beat the Duke Blue Devils, offsetting a 35-point performance from super freshman Zion Williamson, who the New York Knicks are clamoring to get number 1 overall in the draft. Should the New York Knicks tank the rest of the season? Ain't no suspense there. Of course they should. Of course they should. They should do everything they can to get their hands on the number 1 overall pick in this coming NBA draft. So make no mistake about that. Also some news. My man Steve Harvey, Emmy Award-winning personality, producer, talk show host, and my friend, my buddy Steve Harvey, will take the stage as host of NFL Honors on Saturday, February 2nd at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. Super Bowl Eve. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. No doubt about that. All of that and more things to talk about as the show progresses today at 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. First order of business. Adam Gase. I have to go here. I just have to go here. Ladies and gentlemen, that was just funny. John, I'm sorry. I had to go here. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Listen, I want to apologize to those listening to me as opposed to watching me on ESPN News, because if you watch me on ESPN News, you'd be able to see Adam Gase's press conference yesterday, the new head coach for the New York Jets, and how he looked. Now, I'm not accusing the man of anything. I don't know what the hell was wrong with him. I'm going to ask my man Ryan Clark, who's coming out on in hour number 2, what was up with his boy, because this was a graduate assistant that, helped him out when Ryan Clark was a star at LSU, destined for NFL fame. Excuse me. Sorry, I had to sneeze. I apologize. So I'm going to ask Ryan Clark about that at hour number 2, because that's his man. He knows Adam Gase very well. They're pretty tight. And Adam Gase, the former head coach for the Miami Dolphins, who's now the head coach for the New York Jets, who clearly has the support of Christopher Johnson, serving as the CEO for the Jets right now. Sounds like it's Christopher Johnson's hire more than it's Mike McCagnon's hire. Fair enough. This is a guy that he believes in, even though that wasn't the guy he believed in initially, because they initially wanted to give the job to Mike McCarthy, the head coach, the former head coach for the Green Bay Packers, who was unceremoniously relieved of his duties midway through the season because he couldn't get along with Aaron Rodgers. But the New York Jets didn't want to pay him as much money as he was getting paid in Green Bay, from what I'm told. And as a result, they went the route of Adam Gase, which isn't bad, because the Indianapolis Colts last year wanted Josh McDaniels from the New England Patriots, who agreed to be the head coach and then reneged on his promise, leaving the Colts high and dry, who then had to turn around and ultimately hired Frank Wright, who did an outstanding job as head coach for the Indianapolis Colts this year. So that's not to say that just because Adam Gase wasn't your first choice, that he can't end up doing a great job. But if you're going to do a great job, John, if you're going to do a great job, no. If you're going to do a great job, New York Jets fans everywhere, if you're watching on TV, it would help that you don't look like this in your introductory press conference. It really, really would help. I mean, my Lord, have mercy. I'm not going to say the words. I'm not going to be incendiary in any way. All I can tell y'all is this. Watch Dave Chappelle imitating Rick James. Remember what Rick James repeatedly says. I'm not going to repeat it over the airways because I don't want to make unfounded accusations. But I think it's fair to say this was very, very weird. I mean, Adam Gase looked completely out of his element. I don't think New York, man, he don't know New Yorkers very well. They ain't going to let this go. I can promise you that right now. Now, listen. Randy Johnson came to New York City to play for the New York Yankees. He was Randy Johnson. Okay? And he didn't want a photographer in his face and reacted in a very acerbic and belligerent fashion. And a whole bunch of people weren't willing to let him live that down. Well, if you're Adam Gase, what the hell were you doing yesterday? I mean, I'm not talking about, listen, I don't even want to see the photo, John, or the footage of him talking to the media. I'm talking about look at what he was looking around. Oh, my Lord. I think it's fair to ask what the hell was he on? Maybe it was some vitamin supplements. I use those. I've never recalled it making my eyes like that. But boy, was it bizarre. It was very, very bizarre. I must confess. Boy, if there's ever a person that needed a do-over at a press conference, that was it. That was some wild stuff I saw yesterday. It really, really was. But I digress. As funny as that was, as much as it had me thinking about Rick James being imitated by Dave Chappelle, as much as all of that is true, there's bigger fish to fry. There's bigger fish to address. And here's what I would tell you. Jet CEO Christopher Johnson scoffed at those negative reactions in a discussion with reporters after his formal press conference introducing Adam Gase as the new head coach. According to Johnson, quote, I get it. Part of it is I have to earn the fans' trust. We just had a couple of down years. I have to earn their trust. I think they will see, if not right now, they'll see it pretty soon as a great hire. I'm not trying to win Twitter. I'm trying to win football games. I think we're going to win some football games here, end quote. Now, obviously, Adam Gase had the job because of his history of working with quarterbacks. He worked with Peyton Manning. Y'all want to give Adam Gase credit now for Peyton Manning? That's what you really want to do? Peyton Manning came out of Tennessee as a boy wonder. Archie Manning is his father. But we want to give Adam Gase credit for working with him? Okay, fine. Go ahead. That's nice of you. Jay Cutler? You really want to get me started on Jay Cutler? You really want to do that? You really want to do that? I mean, Jay Cutler every single day looked like he was on Prozac. I mean, just battling depression. Every day of his NFL career. That's how I saw him. Ryan Tannehill, you really want to make that argument? $95 million in Miami. What have they done since Ryan Tannehill has been there? We really want to go there? Huh? And not only did Ryan Tannehill, but now he's going to have Sam Darnold. So unless you want to give him credit for Peyton Manning, which I'll be damned if I do, your resume is Jay Cutler, Ryan Tannehill. That's your resume. That's what you want to live off of? That's justification for bringing this man in to oversee the career of Sam Darnold? Good luck with that. Good luck with that, Jets fans. Good luck with it. Now, I like Mike McCagnon. And by the way, I don't know Christopher Johnson at all. But I like the Johnsons. I like him and Woody Johnson. I want them to be more productive, more effective. But I mean, at some point in time, you got to do something. But I'm willing to give Christopher Johnson the benefit of the doubt. I appreciate his comments that he's not trying to win Twitter. He's trying to win football games. But when has Adam Gase done that in abundance? Went to the playoffs a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, with 10-6 record, lost 30-12 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the same guy that gave away Jay Ajayi, who ultimately went on to win a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. There's the same guy that showed unwavering faith in Ryan Tannehill, even though it wasn't warranted. I'm just wondering right now. I really, really am. That's how I feel about it. So good luck, Jets fans. Good luck. If that's your guy and that's what you want to buy, that's what you want to live on, be my guest. Knock yourself out. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. We got a couple of conference championship games coming up this Sunday. First things first, you got the New Orleans Saints going up against the Los Angeles Rams, hosting them at the Superdome in New Orleans. I don't have the Rams winning this game. Could they win the game? Damn right they could. They're talented enough. Without Cooper Kupp, I think they're a bit compromised. But Reynolds is filled in admirably. You still got Woods there and Cooks there, and Todd Gurley's a stud. And now you got C.J. Anderson back there. So you got dual threat at the running back spot. A power game, a more finesse game with power because Todd Gurley is no weakling. He's no punk. He's no softy. But this defense, if this defense can get pressure up the middle, if they can apply pressure to Drew Brees like that, if they can stuff the run the way Ndamukong Suh stuffed the run, and Drew Brees is back there throwing 40 passes a game, and somebody's got to contend with Aaron Donald, man, oh man. It's going to be real interesting to see what transpires in this game. No doubt about it. The Rams could win this game. I just think that the New Orleans Saints are a different team on their home turf. New Orleans should have been in the AFC Championship game last year. If Williams, I think it was. I don't think it was Lattimore. I think it was Williams. If somebody didn't forget to make a damn tackle and ducked under Stephon Diggs with his pass from Case Keenum, and they scored with time expiring, New Orleans destined to go to the NFC Championship game and face the Philadelphia Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field. Didn't pan out that way. Well, this year, the NFC Championship game is in New Orleans. Who dat nation? In New Orleans. It's going to be a big-time party there. It's going to be something special to behold there. And by the way, who gave their motivational speech to them before their game against the Philadelphia Eagles this past Sunday? Hall of Fame, two-time champion, NBA analyst extraordinaire, Isaiah Thomas. And they gave him the game ball afterward, from what I understood. Special moment for him. I would know this because he let me know that it was special for him. And obviously, Sean Payton knows a thing or two about what he's doing. Put cash, $200,000 in cash, and a Lombardi trophy. He said, y'all want, encased it in glass and said, y'all want this, win the Super Bowl. That's what he said. And the game is in New Orleans. If this was in L.A., even though I would give New Orleans a chance, the Rams would be favored. Since it's in New Orleans, the Saints are favored. I think they're a different team on their home turf. I really do. And they got their own dual attack in Kamara and Ingram. Michael Thomas is a stud. And I'm just looking at the Saints right now, and I'm like, what you going to do to stop them? And I remember how Sean Payton essentially trolled Marcus Peters. It wasn't on social media. It was in a post-game press conference when he talked about how the Saints wanted that matchup. They were looking forward to that matchup because Aqib Talib wasn't on the field. But Peters was. And he had the unfortunate dilemma on November 4th of having to go up against Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas had 12 receptions for 211 yards with a touchdown and a 72-yard catch. Just destroyed Peters. And when we get that sound from Peters, I'll play it for you. What Sean Payton said about him after that game and what Peters' retort to that was. Well, this is going to be different. This is going to be different because it's going to be real interesting to see what happens now. Michael Thomas will be there again. Traquan Smith is going to be there. Ted Ginn Jr. is back. And by the way, if Brees hadn't underthrown him, not only would there not have been an interception, there would have been an additional touchdown on the part of New Orleans against Philadelphia Sunday because Ginn was open. So I'm just looking at New Orleans right now. And what I love about this game is everybody has their weapons. I know the Rams don't have Kupp, and that's a big deal. They don't have Cooper Kupp. I understand that. But they got everything else. And you got Talib back, who definitely buffers their secondary and ultimately their defense. And unless the Saints are planning on running the football as much as Los Angeles ran it against Dallas, which was 48 times Saturday night in L.A., Drew Brees is going to drop back to pass. He threw 38 passes against Philadelphia Sunday. How many is he going to throw against L.A. with Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh and Brockers and Fowler and those boys coming at him? Inquiring minds want to know. I mean, it don't get much better than this, y'all. I'm loving this. I'll be the first to tell you that. It's going to be real interesting to see what's going on. And I'm looking at the Saints and the Rams injury list right now as we speak. And I don't see no major injuries here, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Sheldon Rankins, that's a tremendous loss. He's out with an Achilles heel. He's going to miss the rest of the season. That's a devastating loss for the Saints because he's a run stuffer. And when you got Gurley coming at you and C.J. Anderson now, that's a problem. If there's a reason to pick the Rams in this game, that could very well be it. But Cooper Kupp being out with his torn ACL in the left knee is a problem. So I can't summarily dismiss that. And what I would tell you right here, right now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is simply this. It's going to be a nail biter. I don't think there's any question about that. It's going to be a nail biter. And as I look at these boys, and I mean, you got to remember, the acquisition of Dante Fowler from the Jacksonville Jaguars early in the season. Ubicam, who should have had an interception of Dak Prescott Saturday. And Brockers and Donald and Suh. And now you got Talib back with Peters. So Peters can zone out now. He's not great at man-to-man coverage, but he's great in zones. He's not great as an on-ball defender. He's not great manning up. But he does spy. He does cheat. And when he does those things, he's very, very effective, particularly when he's on the field the same time Aqib Talib is. So it's going to get very, very interesting to see what's going to happen in this game. And I got to tell you, I cannot wait. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. I'm looking at the Rams and this defense. Fowler had a sack Saturday. Matter of fact, he had their only sack. They only sacked Dak Prescott once. Just one time. Barron had about 5 tackles. Fowler still had the 3 tackles. He had a quarterback hit, obviously, because he had the sack. And Ndamukong Suh had 2 quarterback hits. And he was applying pressure all afternoon long. He showed up. And Ndamukong Suh shows up like this. Sunday, Saints could have problems. But I still think it's one of them situations where Sean Payton and Drew Brees know what they're doing. And they're going to cause problems for the Rams. And I think it's going to come down to the level of efficiency that the Rams show in terms of putting points on the board. What are they going to do? First of all, you're going to chew up the clock. You're going to be able to run the football with Sheldon Rankins out. Are you going to be able to run the football? That's a huge, huge plus. Because to me, if I'm the Saints, I would dare Jared Goff with them pretty spirals that he throws. I would still dare Jared Goff to beat me. I wouldn't let Anderson and Gurley beat me. I would dare Goff to beat me. That's what I would do. Let Goff go to Woods. Let Goff go to Cooks. Let Goff go to whomever, Reynolds or whomever it is. Let him go to any of those guys. Let him do that. If that's the way I got to go out, that's the way I got to go out. Woods had 6 receptions for 69 yards. Reynolds only had one catch for 19 yards. Cooks had 4 receptions for 65 yards. Higbee had a couple of receptions for 30 yards. Largest reception for the evening was Brandon Cooks getting a 21-yard pass against Dallas. You New Orleans and you're able to keep guys in front of you like that, it might work out for you. But remember, New Orleans also picked up Eli Apple. Now, he arrived. He was there earlier this year, if I remember correctly, when they beat the Rams. So it's going to be real interesting to see. He was there. He had 5 tackles in that game, 4 solo tackles. And he's playing even better. So it's going to be real interesting to see, y'all. Stay tuned. That was the NFC Championship game. I'll get into the AFC Championship game up next, along with some NBA stuff as well. So stick around, don't touch that dial. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show. That was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage in America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. By the way, Peloton is a game-changing indoor cycling bike that brings the energy of live studio classes right to your home anytime you want, winter or summer, rain or shine. Whether it's a monthly challenge to meet your goals, a training program for your next race, or setting a new personal best, the Peloton bike will make you want to show up and keep climbing the live leaderboard year-round. On average, Peloton members are riding their bikes more every year and crushing their personal records along the way. Learn more about the Peloton bike at onepeloton.com or visit your local showroom. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Back with your calls and more in a minute. Here's the Select Quote term life insurance difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, one rate. But Select Quote shops and gets you up to 10 options from highly rated life insurers. For a free personalized quote, call 1-800-601-6992 or go to selectquote.com. You can sit up there and say Dak Prescott didn't have the most stellar game. You can do that. You can point to Ezekiel Elliott rushing for just 47 yards and 20 carries. You can point to the coaching. Because Jason Garrett, in concert with Scott Linehan, ultimately studied their own calls. And the Los Angeles Rams knew exactly what the Cowboys were going to do and when they were going to do it. And as a result, that made them incredibly transparent, which closed the gaps for Ezekiel Elliott to run the football. And as a result, you got what you got. We could go that route. We could do that. We could do that. But here's what I would ask you to see. I would ask you to notice C.J. Anderson rushing for 123 yards and 22 carries. I would ask you to notice Todd Gurley rushing for 115 yards on 16 carries. I would ask you to notice that the two combined for 3 touchdowns. Anderson with 2, Gurley with 1. I would ask you to look at all of those things. And then I would ask you to say this. Tell me that the Dallas Cowboys didn't get punched in the face. That's what this came down to. We can slice it any way we want to. But the Dallas Cowboys got manhandled at the line of scrimmage. And Ndamukong Suh was manhandling the offensive line. No matter what way you slice it. And Whitworth and his crew on the offensive line for the Los Angeles Rams was manhandling the Dallas Cowboys defensive line. Jared Goff was sitting back there. He barely had to put in a day's work. The Los Angeles Rams rushed the football 48 times Saturday night and threw the ball 28 times. One article was comparing the 32-year-old Sean McVay, the youngest head coach in the NFL, to the old coach Chuck Knox from the 70s, because that's the strategy they reverted back to. We're going to run it right down Dallas's throat, and we're going to dare them to do something about it. That is what happened.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $668. Call or click today and find out if we could save you hundreds on your car insurance. Plus, with the Vivid Seats app, it's easy to find awesome seats to any game. Download the app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. 888 say ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. A couple other items I wanted to get into. I don't know if y'all saw Jerry Jones talking about Jason Garrett, but he was interviewed, I think it was 105.3, Dallas, and Jerry Jones was quoted as saying that Jason Garrett would have 5 jobs or 5 teams chasing him. That's what he said. He said, if Coach Jason Garrett hit the open market, he'd get 5 job offers. Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett, who's won 2 playoff games in Lord knows how many years. Jason Garrett. I'm going to make sure that I'm right on point with this right here. Because I want to make sure about this. Because I know that Jason Garrett took over. And when he took over, the year that he took over was 2010. Wade Phillips was the coach initially, and then Jason Garrett came in and helped the Dallas Cowboys finish 6-10. Ladies and gentlemen, thereafter, for 3 consecutive years, 3, Jason Garrett went 8-8, 8-8, 8-8 in back-to-back-to-back years. And each season, he lost the last game of the regular season with a division crown on the line. And he didn't lose it to the same team. He lost it to different teams. This wasn't some Dwayne Casey situation where you're coaching your butt off, but you keep running into LeBron James. No, Jason Garrett lost to the Philadelphia Eagles one year. Then the next year, and don't get me wrong, I don't have the order in front of me, but one year it was Philadelphia. Another minute it was the Washington Redskins. Another year was the New York Giants. Back-to-back-to-back years, 3 consecutive years, he lost to the division foe with the division crown on the line in the last game of the regular season with the division crown on the line. And he kept his job. He comes back in 2014. Dallas Cowboys go 12-4. Okay? They the referees make some bogus call against the Lions. They beat the Lions. And then the catch that wasn't a catch by Des Bryant and all of this other stuff against Green Bay, they lose. They lose, and this season ends 12-4. That was Jason Garrett's first victory in the postseason as a head coach. His 5th year. Basically 3.5 years, actually. All right. Then the following season, 2015, he goes 4-12. And then in 2016, he comes back. They go 13-3 with Dak Prescott in as the quarterback. But when they go 13-3 with Dak Prescott in as the quarterback, they lose to the Green Bay Packers with that terrific pass from Aaron Rodgers down to the left sideline. The following season, they go 9-7. Okay? They miss the playoffs. This year, they go 10-6. They make the playoffs. They beat Seattle. But they lose to the Los Angeles Rams. So he has a second victory. Okay? And 2 victories. All right? Now, he's been a coach since 2010 now. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 7.5 seasons. Jason Garrett has 3 winning seasons. 2 playoff victories. And nothing else. And Jerry Jones says 5 teams would be looking to hire him as their head coach. And you know the sad part about that is, I think Jerry Jones is right. I think Jerry Jones is right. I think that if Jason Garrett was on an open market, there would be about 5 different teams that will hire him as their head coach. I'm not challenging Jason Garrett's knowledge about the game of football. I truly am not. All kidding aside, as much as I love to troll Dallas Cowboy fans, the Dallas Cowboys team, I would love to work for an owner like Jerry Jones, for the most part. national anthem issue aside. Talk to all the players. He loves them, and he's loyal as heck to them. Being in Big D with that star, with the bright lights that the Dallas Cowboys descend upon anybody wearing its uniform and representing its brand, I get it. And it's to be commended in all seriousness, all joking aside. But there's only one word that comes to mind when Jerry Jones makes a statement about Jason Garrett like that. And you know what it is? It's nepotism. Who you know, friends. It's not about a meritocracy. No, Jason Garrett didn't fail to win a postseason game in 16 years as the head coach like Marvin Lewis did. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes, he's been able to take you to the postseason. But the reality of the situation is that Jason Garrett hasn't done enough for Jerry Jones to make a statement like that. A matter of fact, half of Cowboys Nation, if not more, would prefer that Jerry Jones got rid of Jason Garrett. And the only reason, the biggest reason rather, why Jason Garrett is still there is because he's liked, not because he has produced. And because he's such a nice guy. And he's so lovable. He gets to keep his job, even though he's proven to be mediocre at it. It's a damn shame. It goes against what we preach about as Americans. It really does. But that's just me. Jay, you're live with Stephen A. What's up? Jay, are you there? Jay going once. Jay going twice. Goodbye, Jay. Terrence, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Well, Stephen A., you already know, as a Bears fan, I'm still hurt over that missed field goal.
Well,
so I've been keeping
partially blocked field goal. Well, go ahead.
Partially blocked, okay.
All right.
But I've been keeping up with my team recently, and I've been noticing, I noticed that Matt Nagy talked to the press, and he said he wouldn't rule out signing Kareem Hunt.
Correct.
But if I'm the Bears, would I want to sign Kareem Hunt?
Well, let me say this to you. Let me respond to that with a question. Do you believe in second chances?
Yes, I do.
Okay, but then I would sign Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, let me tell you something right now. If Kareem Hunt won the Kansas City Chiefs, we'd be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs being the favorites to win it all. And Damian Williams has done a tremendous job filling in for Kareem Hunt. He balled out Saturday against the Indianapolis Colts. But if you look at Tyreek Hill and the superstar that he is, and you look at Travis Kelce, the best tight end in football that he is, and you look at the return of Sammy Watkins, and you look at the soon-to-be league MVP and Patrick Mahomes, and you combine that with Kareem Hunt being back in the lineup for Kansas City, we're not talking about anybody. We're not even talking about New England beating them. We're really not. We're not even talking about the possibility of New England going into Arrowhead Stadium and beating these boys. We're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs being the favorites to win a Super Bowl, and if they don't win, how much of a blemish and a blotch this would be on the career of Andy Reid. That's what we'd be talking about, and you know it. Kareem Hunt is a bad brother. What he did was inexcusable. He deserves to be put on the commissioner's exempt list. He deserves to be exiled from Kansas City with their history involving domestic violence. You have no choice but to let him go. You can't tolerate that. You had a player years ago that once killed his girlfriend and then went to the Kansas City Chiefs facility and killed himself right in front of Romeo Crennel, if I remember correctly. Because Romeo Crennel is beloved and obviously tried to talk him down, and it didn't work because he realized what he had done, and it was either life in prison or kill himself, and that's what he elected to do. I believe Belcher was his name, if I remember correctly. So if you're the Kansas City Chiefs with that kind of history, I don't think you can do that. Now, I asked Ryan Clark, who played in the NFL, who's an NFL analyst extraordinaire for us, what he thinks when he comes on the show to start off hour number 2, but I don't think that you could bring him to Kansas City. But to Chicago to give him a new start, Kareem Hunt, once he pays his dues, there's not enough to be on the commissioner's exempt list because he's still getting paid. Suspend his behind for at least half the season. make sure that a penance is paid for making such a transgression, and to do everything you can to dissuade repeat behavior in the future. Once that situation is resolved in terms of whetting our appetites for that kind of thing, then I think a team like the Bears could bring him on board.
Would the chances of the Bears winning the Super Bowl go up, though?
Yes. Yes, they would. Yes, they would. I like Jordan Howard, but I think Kareem Hunt is a stud. And Tariq Cohen with a Kareem Hunt, Lord have mercy. Okay? And Mitchell Trubisky is not a scrub. He had a good playoff game, and he's shown some promise. And then you look at some of their weapons. Okay? I'm sorry, with Robinson and Gabriel and those boys, and Chicago's defense, you damn right it will elevate Chicago's chances, without question. That's the only reason. Why else would Nagy bring it up? Why would he bring it up? He wouldn't bring it up for just an average player.
Kansas City, though.
Yeah, I got you. I feel you on that. No question. Appreciate the call, my man. Thank you so much. Get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with Shell V-Power Nitro, plus premium gasoline. Also, if you missed my opening segment, go check it out as well as my entire show on demand in the Stephen A. Podcast, brought to you by the new Capital One Saver Card. Earn 4% back cash, or cash back rather, on dining and entertainment, 2% at grocery stores, and 1% at all other purchases. Hey, what's in your wallet? 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. We'll get back to your phone calls. Talking about Kareem Hunt, talking about NFL playoff action, talking about some NBA action as well, talking about Adam Gase and that press conference with the New York Jets last night. All that and more before Ryan Clark comes on to start off hour number 2. Don't touch that dial. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
You're the Chargers, and you're literally bragging about the fact that you play 7 DBs. You're going to rush 4, you're going to push 7 dudes into the secondary. Tom Brady was operating in a clean pocket all night long. He was sitting back, calling Giselle, saying hi to the kids, taking pictures, letting her know what he wanted for dinner before he threw a damn pass. And he ended up completing 34 or 44 passes for 343 yards. Sony Michel, coming into the game, I told y'all last week, Sony Michel was going to be the star of the game because they were going to run the football down. And the Patriots knew. But little did I know that James White was going to catch 15 catches. 15! It was only for 97 yards, but it was 15 catches. Julian Edelman had 9 catches for 151 yards. 8 of them were for first downs. I mean, Tom Brady was picking open receivers. Rob Gronkowski, there was a sighting. He ran over a couple of defenders a couple of times. He ain't the best tight end in football anymore. That would happen to be Travis Kelce. But I'm here to tell you something right now. The New England Patriots looked absolutely awesome. And for all of y'all out there, including myself, who's tired of seeing the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, I got news for you. You better get on your knees and pray for Patrick Mahomes to show up and show out. Because what he did against Indianapolis, even though he was relatively decent, we know that Damian Williams running that football. We know that them jumping out to a 17-0 lead against Andrew Luck. We know that Houston and D Ford and those boys, being all in Andrew Luck's face all evening long, played a significant role in Kansas City winning that game in inclement snowy weather. But don't expect that for 1 second to be the case against these New England Patriots. It was like the New England Patriots said, okay, it's the playoffs, y'all. We were playing around with y'all during the regular season. Have y'all forgotten who the hell we are?
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. We're coming to you live from the Seaport District at Pier 17, South Street Seaport. Being brought to you by Chase. Plus, tune in tonight for college basketball action as Virginia Tech battles Virginia. Presented by Peloton. Coverage begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Let's get back to the phones real quick before hour number 2 begins with my man Ryan Clark. Let's go to KC. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
What's going on, Stephen A?
What's up?
I have a couple of points. The first one regarding Adam Gase and his press conference yesterday.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's up?
All I've heard is a lot of people, talking about his eyes and everything like that. I don't know if this has been reported on, but to me it looks like he has a neurological disorder. It looks like Tourette syndrome, namely.
I've never heard. Stop. Are you a doctor? Are you a doctor? I've never heard anything like that. I'll look it up. But I'm not going to just take your word for it. I've never heard that.
I'm just saying that that's what it looks like to me, and I'm just saying out of experience, publicly speaking with that, it's very, very difficult.
Hold on. Everybody knows that if that's your condition, we all know what Tourette syndrome is. What I'm saying is I never heard that with Adam Gase, not one time. So I'll stand corrected. All right, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. I'll stand corrected because I certainly didn't know that. I certainly didn't deny. I'm not denying that you're right or whatever. I did not know that. I will double check. John, Nuno, my producers, please check that and find out if that is true. Because if that is true, then that's that's nothing to laugh about. I never heard that about Adam Gase. Never once. Okay? Never paid much attention to him other than the job he was doing in Miami, but I was never aware of that. I'll find out. I'll ask Ryan, Ryan Clark. I was talking to him this morning. He certainly never mentioned it. And he's known the man for years. But anyway, I digress. Let's go to Brian. You're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Brian. Go ahead.
Stephen A., my Larry Hagman wannabe. How you doing?
All right. Go ahead, man.
Hey, I just wanted to talk about the Celtics for a minute. I heard you and Max and Molly talking about the Celtics this morning. And why do they stink so bad, Stephen A.?
Who?
It's just like when Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving were hurt last year.
Hello?
More cohesive, more together.
Okay. You're talking about the Celtics. See, you're talking, but you're not listening because I was asking who the hell are you talking about. If you're talking about the Boston Celtics, your position has no credence. What do you mean, why do they stink so bad and they're 25-18?
They just don't seem as hungry as they
don't
were
seem.
last
They
year
don't
when,
seem
like,
as hungry,
Hayward
but you
and
didn't say
Irving were both
that.
out.
You said they stink. Why do they stink so bad? The New York Knicks, along with a few other teams, you can make the Phoenix Suns, maybe the Chicago Bulls to a lesser degree. You can't say a 25-18 team stinks.
Did you think that they would be 25-18 after 43
No, but that
games,
doesn't
Stephen
mean
A?
they stink. It means they're not as good as I suspected they would be. But that doesn't mean they stink. You're not stinking if you're 7 games over 500. Call back when you make sense. Goodbye. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Hour number 2 up next. My man Ryan Clark will be in the house. Looking forward to talking to him. Hour number 2. Don't touch that dial.
From coast to coast, the Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
Welcome to hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show radio on ESPN Radio and ESPN News, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, protecting commercial vehicles and offering specialized coverages designed to protect small businesses. MoreProgressiveCommercial.com. It is always my honor and privilege to have my next guest. He is sitting right next to me. He is an NFL analyst extraordinaire for the family, a protege of mine. He's a youngster. I know. I'm the old fogey in this mix. Also does a great job contributing to ESPN's First Take every throughout the week during the weekdays. The one and only Ryan Clark is sitting right across from me. What's up, my brother? How are you?
I'm nervous about where this is going after being on First Take with you.
You should be nervous because of a couple of reasons. Number one, I saw you on the air Saturday night talking about New England and the Chargers before the game. Or rather Sunday, I'm sorry. Around Sunday. We'll get into that, though. We'll get into that. That's football stuff. I got to get into something personal with you, Ryan Clark.
What's that?
Like Adam Gase, the new head coach for the New York Jets. That's your guy.
That's my guy.
Now, what is your history with him?
Well, so when Nick Saban took over LSU, he was a grad assistant there.
Okay.
And so he would help me break down film, make sure I had the right thing on the offenses that we were facing. He was kind of the first guy that taught me how to dissect game plans and understand certain strategies.
So basically, very nice guy.
Awesome dude.
Very knowledgeable.
Super smart.
Usually on point, right?
On point.
Very, very thorough, right?
Absolutely.
Could you possibly explain what the hell was going on with him yesterday? I'm not going to say how he looked. All I'm going to sit there and say is, go to Dave Chappelle imitating Rick James. Think about that.
You know what? I am not going to let you do this to my guy.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So you were already on First Take gasing. That's what we call it now. You're already on there gasing. I tweeted it during the press conference.
Okay.
My guy had took some pre-workout.
Okay.
Right, because he was ready to roll.
Okay.
Right. He's excited about taking the job for the Jets. Right. He was just going, and he was having that look because he was going through his mind of, okay, who do I want to hire as my defensive coordinator? You know, where am I going to go with this coach? How do I make Sam Darnold a better player?
During the press conference spanning minutes? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And that's why those eyes were darting all over the place. And he was looking. Really?
He was thinking.
So when he was on the coaching sidelines, when he was coaching the Miami Dolphins over the last 3 years, analyzing and dissecting what's going on a football field during the game for 16 weeks, spanning 3 years, 48 regular season games, one playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, in which he never looked like that. Suddenly he's at a press conference for the New York Jets, and he look, I don't want to say it, but he looked wild. He looked wild, Ryan Clark.
No, so I'm trying to tell you what it was, Stephen A. He was coming in.
Okay.
You know, it's the New York press, right? He understands how big of a moment it is, and so I just think he was really focused on the job at hand.
And you said he was working out prior to the press conference.
Yeah, he must have had pre-workout.
Well, you
so
know,
you fired up.
You boss.
So he was fired up.
Yeah, don't you play a role in training, and don't you own your own fitness center?
Yeah.
So when you buffed up like that and working out, that's you too? Is that you? I just want to know.
Not me, because I don't take pre-workout.
Oh, pre-workout. What's
pre-workout?
What do you mean you don't take pre-workout?
So pre-workout is it's like a formula that gets you hyped up and ready to go for your workout.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of dudes are listening to you right now because they can get fired up. They can be having other things on their mind to get themselves. I'm just saying to get themselves energized.
That's how you get swole.
I'm just to get themselves energized. You see what I'm saying, guys? Somebody's using weight. Some dudes were using something else. I'm just saying. I'm listening because hey, I can use that. I can use that.
You might need that.
I can use that. That's right.
Don't you want to be wired like Adam Gase was today?
Well, I don't need to be wired because I'm wired enough. I love my job. I'm passionate.
Right. But I'm talking about for your workout.
But I'm just saying,
you getting in shape now.
Yes.
You cut down on the cereal.
That's right.
Right.
That's
You're not eating.
How am I doing? I cut it down.
Good. You're not eating crunch berries.
Not completely. I did cheat a couple of times last week, Ryan Clark. But I'm just saying. So this pre-workout powder.
That's what he took.
That's what he took?
That's what he took.
Did you speak to him? Did he tell you that, or is that what you're assuming?
I'm assuming that.
Okay.
He didn't tell me that.
All right.
Like, all we talked about last night was, him getting the job. He's fired up about having it. He thought that people didn't think that he would have a job this quickly, and he's ready to go. We didn't really talk about the way he looked in the press conference. Because that's not what real friends do.
Oh, right.
You see what I'm saying?
Real friends can't sit up there and say, yo, man, what the hell was wrong with you? A real friend can't do that. Real friend can't be like, let me wrap you off the record. What the hell was going on? Why were you looking like that at the press conference? A real friend can't do that.
I'm going to find out for you, man.
I'm a real friend to a lot of cats, and I would do that.
I'm going to have it for you next week.
I'm a real friend to you. I love you like a brother.
So you would tell me?
Hell yes. I come up there. You know me. I pick up the phone.
RC, what's going on?
I'd be like, yo, Ryan, what's up?
You good?
What the hell was that about? Do you have any idea how you looked at that press conference next to the CEO? What's going on?
All I'm saying is, man, you wrong for gasing. You wrong for gasing on First Take.
Ryan Clark right here with Stephen A, ESPN Radio, ESPN
That's my
News,
guy.
coming to the defense of his boy.
That's my guy.
Adam Gase, new head coach of the New York Jets. By the way, while we on the subject, any issue with him being the head coach of the Jets?
You know, I don't have an issue with it. If you kind of hear how the coaching search went, I thought Mike McCarthy was the guy that's in the lead for that job. They couldn't really get it done. And they're probably.
I heard it was because they wanted to pay him less than he was getting paid at Green Bay.
That's what it
was.
was.
Is that true?
That's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it was. They didn't want to match that salary, and he wanted to work for that salary. And so now you go to Adam Gase, a guy that you saw do well with Jay Cutler in Chicago. Obviously, Peyton Manning is his own thing. This is his
I don't
first.
recall Jay Cutler doing well in Miami.
In Chicago. I said in Chicago. In Chicago. Yeah, that's why he got the Miami job. That's why he got the Miami job. And so now, though, he's never worked with a young, talented quarterback like this. And this is an opportunity to set his legacy. Mm-hmm. He can be tied to Sam Darnold for the rest of his career as the Jets franchise quarterback. Or if he fails here, he probably doesn't get another head coaching job. So this is important for Gase.
Ryan Clark right here with Stephen A, ESPN Radio.
I'm going to
move on. I'm going to move on now. I was asking him about the coach because I wasn't high on him in all seriousness.
Right. No,
listen, I'm not knocking him. I want to be very, very clear about Adam Gase. He did take the Dolphins to a playoff his first year. They lost 30-12 to the Steelers in the wild card game. With a backup quarterback. But they went to the playoffs the first year. The last 2 seasons, not so great. Mired with injuries and all of that stuff. I get all of that. All I'm saying is if you're the New York Jets, it's New York City, and you're trying to sell fans on the future of this franchise and the direction that you're going in, you go with a guy that's missed the playoffs the last 2 years that's within your division. I got a problem with that.
I will say this. This cycle of coaching hirings was perplexing, right? I heard you talk some about the Cliff Kingsbury
horrible
hire, and then you look at Adam Gase, you look at LaFleur in Green Bay coming off of a 27th ranked offense.
That's right.
And so I am looking at some of these hires.
Kitchens in Cleveland.
And so when you compare the Gase hire to what else we've seen around the league, you start to say this may be one of the better hires. You got a guy who has head coaching experience in the NFL. You have a guy who's gone to a playoff game. You have a guy who's had success with a quarterback who not many people have felt like played to his potential. And so, for me, looking at what this cycle was, I think Adam Gase was one of the better hires of the cycle.
Well, having said all of that, do you take issue with the appearance that everyone's looking for the next Sean McVay? I mean, first of all, is that an accurate depiction that people are trying to look for that next guy? And how do you feel about it?
I think everybody's looking for the quarterback guy, right? Everybody's looking for a guy who could work with the quarterback. And I don't necessarily think that has to be your head coach, right? Because not every head coach is going to deal with the quarterback a ton. I'm going to say something, Stephen A., and, it's kind of off the subject. I hope you let me do it for a second.
Sure, absolutely.
Many people are pointing to the lack of minority head coaching hires.
I would be at the front of the line with that. I'd be at the front of the line.
And so many people want to blame it on race and blatant racism. Here's what I'll say about it, and I tweeted about it. This is so historic, right? Because now they're putting it on, they want to hire the quarterback guy or the guy that works with quarterback. How many black quarterback coaches are there in the league?
I have no idea.
That's what I'm saying. How many black offensive line coaches or minority coaches? And so what's happening is, if this is going to be the pipeline to head coaching, if being an offensive coordinator, being a quarterback guy is going to be that pipeline, how are we, the Rooney Rule might as well not even be in effect because we're not getting those guys even hired on the lower level offensively.
So you agree with me in terms of...
I 100% agree with you. And I think I also think it's a deeper conversation than just head coaches. Right?
Well, take it there, Ryan. You take it there. I'm listening.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So you look at, let's go through historically, right? So if we're going to hire the quarterback guy, historically, it was always questioned, could African Americans or could minorities play the quarterback position based on intelligence, right? And so now you don't have that direct correlation between those guys becoming quarterback coaches, right? So they don't get to be offensive coordinators. They never get to be considered offensive geniuses. And so now when this coaching cycle comes around, that's all they're looking for. LaFleur, you can have the 27th ranked offense, right? With Marcus Mariota in Tennessee.
That's right.
And get a head coaching job.
Right.
How?
Kingsbury.
You can lose your job at Texas Tech.
At Texas Tech, get a job at USC. Don't even have a moment to go to Roscoe's for chicken and waffles and get a NFL coaching job.
And so to me, I think we have to take a deeper look. The NFL has to take a deeper look into the hiring of minority coaches, not just at the head coaching level, but throughout the building. Because what you see what's happening is, right, you're hired to coach wide receivers. You're hired to coach defensive backs. You hired to coach linebackers. One, because you play those positions. Two, because the people in the room, they want you to be able to deal with them. Mm-hmm. They don't see that in the quarterback's room. They don't see that in the offensive coordinator's room, where you need a guy that's going to deal with them play in and play out. And for me, we have to start pushing for some of these minority coaches to be hired on the lower level offensively if this is where we're going to get our coaches from as the head coaching position is concerned.
Well, let's break down the numbers. We've got you had 8 coaching openings.
Right.
Not one single African American was hired. Not one.
Right. When African Americans lost jobs.
That's
as well.
right. When 5 African Americans lost their job. Then you have 70% of the players who are black. Mm-hmm. You have now 2 black head coaches in Mike Tomlin and Anthony Lynn.
Yes.
Okay. With a coach with people calling for his head, even though he won 65% of his games in his 12-year career at Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin. You've got one African American GM who's now in Miami. Mm-hmm. You have 0 minority owners. Or black owners. I think, Shad Khan in Jacksonville. So I guess what I'm saying is I totally agree with you, but I'm going to take it to a different place as well. I'm not just concerned about it with the NFL, Ryan. I'm concerned about it with the NBA as it pertains to analytics.
Okay.
There's this movement towards analytics per se. And you see GMs, and if you've got a background with analytics or what have you, how is that going to ultimately position you? You ingratiate yourself with owners because owners don't understand. Some owners don't understand sports,
right?
But they understand numbers and business.
They understand
so
business.
If you're an analytics dude, they can certainly relate to that. You hire that guy, he hires people he wants to hire, but they're in charge. And ultimately, you find yourself where there's a paucity of minorities in this position. I think it's taking place not just in the NFL, but the NBA. What do you say to all of that?
Well, I say that too, though. That also leans to the nepotism in these sports, right? Or it leans to the good old boy kind of crew, in the sense that I've coached with your dad. I know your uncle, or I know this guy, or you coached under this guy, and so now I'm going to give you a hand up. And I think that
Gruden with Mike Mayock,
absolutely,
the San Francisco 49ers with Lynch and Shanahan and
right.
those boys.
Like you even look at it. So LaFleur's little brother is a coach in San Francisco, right? And now he's one of the hottest coaching candidates in the NFL. But why?
That's right.
Right? What great success are they having offensively in San Francisco?
That's right.
What great success are they having to where they're winning games?
Because Nick Mullins had a good game after Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. Suddenly he's a golden boy.
And so to me, like, those things are things that people point to. This is why we want this guy. This is why we want that guy. Where minority coaches aren't afforded that, right? They also aren't afforded the time. And I'll be honest, a lot of people point to Marvin Lewis, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that he got to be there over 15 years and never won a playoff game.
Nobody was calling for him to be gone for me.
And you called for him
That's right.
the whole time.
To be out of Cincinnati, but to not be a head coach.
Right, to not be out of Cincinnati. But what I'm saying is, that's one of the rare occasions, right? I pointed to the Mike Tomlin hire when we were talking about guys not necessarily having a long lineage of coaching, right? Not being coordinators for a long time and getting hired. That's only been for Mike T, right? And then Vance Joseph goes and John Elway's like, oh, I made a mistake. Those type of things, those type of situations set minority coaches back. Here's the other thing, though. When you look at Todd Bowles, Steve Wilkes, Vance Joseph, and their offensive coordinators, none of those guys were minority. Mike T, one of my friends, right? A guy I respect more than any in the league, has never had a minority offensive coordinator. So it's not just that other people aren't hiring.
Is that minorities aren't hiring minorities.
Absolutely. And that's another part of the issue. And you don't want to give them an excuse, but I think sometimes it comes down to, sometimes they feel like those guys, or most times I'm sure they feel like those guys give them the best opportunity to win.
Of course.
Right? And you have to feel like, as being a minority, you need to make that decision to win.
That's right.
Right? You don't get the opportunity to help your homeboy or to show that type of nepotism, hire a friend, because if you fail, you all fail, and you don't get another chance. But it's getting difficult. It's more and more difficult now for minorities to become head coaches if we don't start helping each other out on the lower level.
Interesting question before I get into these couple of games this weekend. You saw guys protesting over Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
And I'm not advocating a protest by any stretch of the imagination. But what I will say is this. It really rakes my nerves that guys would be willing to take a knee or to speak out on behalf of Colin Kaepernick being blackballed, but they don't take it upon themselves to speak out on what's been transpiring with these coaching hires, the absence of coordinators of minority descent being hired, et cetera, the kind of things that you point to. You are a retired player and bringing all of this up. They are playing in the league, and maybe that's a reason why they're not doing it. But nevertheless, you'd like to believe that somebody could speak up. Somebody could have the wherewithal to speak up on behalf of minorities in this sport and how the numbers are dwindling.
No, the numbers are getting smaller, and like I said, they're getting smaller on every level, and that's an issue. I don't know what you can do as a player to speak up, because obviously if you're a guy that's being coached by Bill Belichick, I guess you definitely don't want to make it seem like you don't want to be coached by him.
That's right.
Right? Or if you have anybody, so you definitely don't make it that way, but you do want to see that there is opportunity for minority coaches. You do want to see that there is an upward swing in the chances that they're getting, and there's going to be one hired in Miami. They're saying they're going to hire Flores in Miami from the New England Patriots, and so that's one guy. But it's going to have to be more of a swell of people supporting these coaches in order to get them more opportunities.
Ryan Clark right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let's transition back to these games, the stuff that's been taking place on the field. You saw in the NFC what happened with Dallas against L.A. You saw what happened with the Saints against Philadelphia, or Philadelphia against the Saints, rather. What did you peel from that and preview this L.A.-New Orleans matchup?
I think this game is going to be totally different than the first game. I don't foresee it being 45-35 as it was. I think Aqib Talib being able to play is huge, because now Marcus Peters doesn't have to follow Michael Thomas. We saw how that worked out. You saw what Sean Payton said. He said, we like that matchup a lot. And so I think that's different. I was very encouraged by the Rams' front seven in this last game.
Especially Ndamukong Suh.
Ndamukong Suh stepped up and played like what we thought he'd play like all season. He inverted the line of scrimmage. He made plays in the backfield. That's something they need for him to go along with Aaron Donald. And offensively, the two-headed monster at the running game was very surprising to me. To see C.J. Anderson and Ty Gurley carve up this Dallas Cowboys defense, which I thought was a highlight of the team, the way they did was huge. And that's the only way they have a chance in New Orleans. They have to start with the running game. They need to control the ball, get the play action off of that. But you got to be able to stop Drew Brees and that offense in New Orleans. And I just don't know if the Rams find a way to stop them enough to win. But I do believe this is the best matchup or the best opportunity any NFC team had to.
One of the best sounds of the season was Marcus Peters responding to Sean Payton when Sean Payton talked about it. That's the matchup we wanted. We were looking for whatever. And Marcus Peters, I hear him talking all of that other stuff.
You feel me?
What did you make of that, and what do you expect from Peters in light of what Sean Payton had to say about them in their previous matchup? So Michael Thomas, by the way, had 211 receiving yards.
He went crazy.
Yes.
So when you watch Marcus Peters play, he's not a man-to-man cover guy, right? He's not disciplined enough. When you're going to be a guy that plays man-to-man, you have to be disciplined with your eyes, disciplined with your technique, and he's not, right? He's not a matchup follow around in the slot guy. But now with Aqib Talib, he plays the right side, right? They try to do their best to keep him in zone coverage, because he's a guy that needs to see the ball, needs to be able to fill the coverage out, and he's been doing that, and they've been better because of it. And so I expect Marcus Peters to be targeted. I expect Michael Thomas to be on the left side of the offense to have opportunities against them. But I believe Aubrey Pleasance, the defensive backs coach of the Los Angeles Rams, he understands that. He knows that. Wade Phillips, the D coordinator, he knows that. So they're going to have to be smart in the way that they play defense.
Is that your way of saying Marcus Peters is going to have to be hidden?
No, I'm not saying he has to be hitting, but he needs to play hidden. He needs to play to his strengths. He needs to be coached to his strengths, right? And if you know Marcus Peters, if you've watched him, he's a hothead, right?
Yes,
He's a guy who can get out of his game. They're going to have to do a good job of keeping him focused on the task at hand and not making it a battle between him and Sean Payton, him and Michael Thomas, understanding that he needs to be part of the defense, because if not, he'll get exploited.
You got the Saints winning this game?
No, I can't take the Saints. You know why?
Why not?
Because I picked the Rams to win the Super Bowl.
Didn't I tell you 2 California teams wasn't going to the Super Bowl?
I still got one left. Though, Stephen A.
I tried to tell y'all. I'm trying to tell y'all that damn Southern California weather. You know, see, you can't go into the cold. It's not going to work. I tried to tell y'all.
They sent my boys east twice, man.
Who the hell am I? Who the hell am I? I caught into the Chargers hype stupidly at the last minute. You know, I'm throwing New England, Kansas City all year long. And then a Friday before it, I said, the hell with it. I don't like how Gronk's looking. And I'm going to go with.
You're welcome.
Oh, my goodness. Don't even get me started. Kansas City. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect them to do what they did against Indy. I think that says a lot, not just their ability to run the football. Damian Williams is not getting enough credit for how he's filled in for Kareem Hunt at all. Right. But defensively, I never saw that coming.
That was the most surprising to me, the way they were able to rush the passer, but also stop the run. Kansas City has been gashed all season on the run. They didn't allow Marlon Mack to get going, and we all raved about this offensive line from the Indianapolis Colts, and they couldn't stop him. D Ford was coming off the edge. Justin Houston, the way that they were able to put pressure on Andrew Luck and also cover on the back end, right? Orlando Scandrick has been benched. Ron Parker has been benched. They've went with a younger, more athletic group of DBs, and it's worked. Nelson's played well. Kyle Fuller was amazing on T.Y. Hilton in the slot. And so if they can play like that this week against the Patriots.
But do you have faith in Bob Sutton and Andy Reid against Bill Belichick? That's the question for me.
I think Andy Reid is one of the great coaches this game.
I love Andy Reid. We go back many years.
Yeah, and I can't say that every playoff loss has been a factor, or the factor has been him not being able to coach.
Neither do I, but 20 years is 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years is 20 years, but they have – not every coach wins a Super Bowl either, though, Stephen A. But the reason we point to Andy Reid is because he's such a good coach, and we feel like he should have won one.
Here's my issue. I don't care who you are. If you in a job for 20 years, at some point you got to be number one. It's just that simple to me. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, doing what I do for a profession. I mean, listen, it ain't going to last forever, but damn it, I'm at the top. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, at some point in time, I've been at the top.
You got to be number one at some point.
At some point. 20 years. 20 years. That's my issue, and that's the only issue I have with Andy Reid. People get into him, late game calling, game winds down, some of the play calls. I don't think about all of that. All I'm thinking about, 20 years, at some point in time, you got to be number one.
And what's to say that this year's not that year?
That's what I'm saying. I believe it is. I believe it is too.
All right, then we agree for once.
But I'm saying he got to do it.
But it has to be.
It got to be.
This has to be. This is, you have home field advantage. You have an MVP quarterback playing at just an invincible clip. Mm-hmm. He has to win it this year.
30 seconds or less. I know it won't happen because I've been told by the Chiefs they would never take back Kareem Hunt. Mm-hmm. But the Chicago Bears supposedly are looking at Kareem Hunt. Right. If you Kansas City, do you consider bringing him back?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can. You know, you go with the history of the Kansas City Chiefs and different things in domestic violence. You can't be the team that's okaying all of these guys to be able to commit acts like that. And I believe everybody deserves second chances.
Right.
But Kansas City can't be the team that does it.
Got you. I appreciate that perspective. Thanks a lot. The one and only Ryan Clark right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN. He's about to leave me, go hang with Adam Gase, I guess. I mean, that's his boy. So he's about to go hang with Adam. Just tell Adam, just stay away from the press conferences for the immediate future.
Leave my boy alone, man.
Just tell him to stay.
Leave my guy alone,
I got faith in him. I think he might be able to do some things with the Jets. I'm hopeful. He don't need to have no press conference anytime soon. Or maybe he needs to have a press conference immediately. Matter of fact, maybe he need to have one tomorrow just to show everybody that was an aberration. I got to go. Take it easy, Ryan Clark. Take it easy. By the way, the Peloton is a game-changing indoor cycling bike that brings the energy of live studio classes right to your home anytime you want, winter or summer, rain or shine. Whether it's a monthly challenge to meet your goals, a training program for your next race, or setting a new personal best, the Peloton bike will make you want to show up and keep climbing the live leaderboard year-round. On average, Peloton members are riding their bikes more every year and crushing their personal records along the way. Learn more about the Peloton bike at onepeloton.com or visit your local showroom. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You heard Ryan Clark speaking about Adam Gase, speaking about minority coaches, speaking about the playoff games, the NFC and AFC championship game that's coming up this weekend, who's going to show up in the Super Bowl. All that and more I'll get into with you. The call is in a minute, so don't touch that dial. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Here's the Select Quote term life insurance difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, one rate. But Select Quote shops and gets you up to 10 options from highly rated life insurers. For a free personalized quote, call 1-800-601-6992 or go to selectquote.com. You can sit up there and say Dak Prescott didn't have the most stellar game. You can do that. You can point to Ezekiel Elliott rushing for just 47 yards and 20 carries. You can point to the coaching. Because Jason Garrett, in concert with Scott Linehan, ultimately studied their own calls. And the Los Angeles Rams knew exactly what the Cowboys were going to do and when they were going to do it. And as a result, that made them incredibly transparent, which closed the gaps for Ezekiel Elliott to run the football. And as a result, you got what you got. We could go that route. We could do that. We could do that. But here's what I would ask you to see. I would ask you to notice C.J. Anderson rushing for 123 yards and 22 carries. I would ask you to notice Todd Gurley rushing for 115 yards on 16 carries. I would ask you to notice that the two combined for 3 touchdowns. Anderson with 2, Gurley with 1. I would ask you to look at all of those things. And then I would ask you to say this. Tell me that the Dallas Cowboys didn't get punched in the face. That's what this came down to. We can slice it any way we want to. But the Dallas Cowboys got manhandled at the line of scrimmage. And Ndamukong Suh was manhandling the offensive line. No matter what way you slice it. And Whitworth and his crew on the offensive line for the Los Angeles Rams was manhandling the Dallas Cowboys defensive line. Jared Goff was sitting back there. He barely had to put in a day's work. The Los Angeles Rams rushed the football 48 times Saturday night and threw the ball 28 times. One article was comparing the 32-year-old Sean McVay, the youngest head coach in the NFL, to the old coach Chuck Knox from the 70s, because that's the strategy they reverted back to. We're going to run it right down Dallas's throat, and we're going to dare them to do something about it. That is what happened.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
You know what never goes out of style? Surprising a special friend or loved one with 24 multicolored roses for $29.99 from 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call up. That's always 888-729-3776. That is always the number to call into the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. You heard Ryan Clark with that extensive interview that we just had. Let's get back to the phones to talk about a variety of things. I don't want to forget James Harden and that 57-point explosion last night. 17 straight games he scored a minimum of 30 points. Last 17 games he's averaged over 40. It's just phenomenal. 2-horse race right now for league MVP honors between him and the Greek Freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee. But James Harden is spectacular. No question about it. Congratulations also to Mike D'Antoni winning his 600th career game as a head coach. I will say this. The way Houston is looking right now, the way that they are playing right now, I don't think it bodes well for postseason success unless Chris Paul comes back and plays lights out. Chris Paul is a future Hall of Famer as far as I'm concerned. He just re-upped with a 4-year, $160 million deal. The money that they paid him was why they couldn't pay to keep Trevor Ariza. Chris Paul has already missed about 17 games this year. He comes back. He needs to be ready to ball. Because with James Harden playing the way that he's playing, they could get to the finals. But I think it's only if Chris Paul comes back and does what we know he's capable of doing. Outside of that, Kyrie Irving and the Boston Celtics lost the game again. Lost to the Brooklyn Nets, and the fans in Brooklyn were chanting, "Kyrie's leaving. Kyrie's leaving," saying that to the Boston Celtics. And you had teammates after the game saying they just got to stick together and not call anybody out, which is what players obviously were alluding to in terms of Kyrie Irving calling them out for their struggles. Real interesting stuff going on in Boston. They're underachieving. They're still 25-18, playing elite defense over the last several games until the last couple of games. But they got to get it together because Toronto and Milwaukee are there. Let's get back to the phones at 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Miss Shirley Knox, you are live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
How are you? Thank you for calling.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you, I'm a big fan of yours. I listen to you all the time on the radio and the TV.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to call and thank you for mentioning Chuck. You know, he was always called Ground Chuck in the 70s when he was with the Rams. And, you know, he always said, you can't win games without a good running game. And they used to always say, "Oh, he was too conservative," or
excuse
things
me,
like that.
Excuse me for interrupting. Your name is Shirley Knox. What is your relation to Chuck Knox?
He was my husband.
Wow. Oh my goodness, it's an honor to talk to you. Thank you so much for calling into the show. Your late husband, he passed away. What is it? May of 2018?
Yes.
May of this year, if I remember.
Yes.
My condolences to you and your family. Thank you so much for calling.
Well, like I said, I'm a big fan of yours. And, you know, it's funny. When I heard you say that about Chuck, I said to myself, it's about time. But, you know, Chuck did so many great things when he was coaching the Rams. You know, he had the first black African-American quarterback. And, you know, he always was teased, he was too conservative. You know, he always ran the ball. But anyway, I just wanted to call you and say thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I can't take full credit. The reason why I mentioned him is because I was doing my research after the Rams had won the game against Dallas on Saturday night, just reading up on various articles to prepare for Monday's show. And I had read a few articles, and one of them, and I excuse me for forgetting the gentleman's name, but he had mentioned how we expected an aerial assault from Sean McVay and his Los Angeles Rams with Jared Goff, and what we got was a version of Chuck Knox, and you know, in his running game, the running game that he employed as coach of the Los Angeles Rams from 73 to 77, the 5 seasons that he was there before departing for Buffalo. And so I remembered that, and that's why I mentioned it on the air. But obviously, I had a lot of respect for your husband, and I thank you so much for calling.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I think the coach of the Rams is doing a great job.
Yes, he is.
And he reminds me of Chuck a lot because no nonsense kind of guy, and he's all football, and they're doing a great job, and I keep rooting for them. So I appreciate you taking my call. And I thank you for calling. Really honored to have you call into the show, and I can't thank you enough. You take care of yourself. Okay, thank you, Stephen. Okay, thank you. The lovely Shirley Knox, widow of Chuck Knox, former coach with the Los Angeles Rams, the Buffalo Bills, the Seattle Seahawks. He coached about 22 years in the National Football League. Coached from 73 to 77 for the Los Angeles Rams. Coached from 78 to 82 for the Buffalo Bills. Coached from 83 to 91 for the Seattle Seahawks. And then coached from 92 to 94 back in Los Angeles before retiring. Great Chuck Knox. God rest his soul. God bless his soul as well. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Let's go to Darnell. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Darnell.
Hey, Stephen A. Love
What's
everything
up?
you do. Look up to you and Stuart Scott in
Thank
the
you.
business.
Thank you, man. Go ahead.
First of two things. One, how much of a difference has C.J. Anderson made the Rams?
Well, listen, that's one game. That's one game. I mean, the fact is it was a very, very big deal because there were so many questions about Todd Gurley and the way that Todd Gurley was going to perform in light of the fact that he had not been 100%. So we're looking at it from that standpoint. But the reality is that you got to give credit where credit is due because CJ did show up, and that dual attack was too much because obviously if you want to run the football, you can't run the football 48 times by just giving it to Todd Gurley. You got to have some help. And Todd Gurley definitely had that help with C.J. Anderson, who ended up running the ball for more yards than him. So I got to give credit where credit is due in that regard and show respect in that regard.
Okay, and my other question, let's go to the NBA. What are the matches missing for people can really look at them as
a star,
a legit
a star,
container?
a star. Gordon can play. Vucevic can definitely play. He's averaging 20 and 12. He's averaging 20 and 12 for you. Fournier can play. DJ Augustine is filled in admirably. I think you need a big-time guard and preferably a star at that position. Look, Ross, Isaac, Simmons, and those guys, they can play. They're not scrubs. Bomba's got a lot of potential. We all know that. I just think that you need a guard you need a star on the perimeter as a guard. You don't need, this ain't the age of Shaq or Dwight Howard and those guys. No, you need a backcourt star in Orlando. You got to find him. That's what you need.
Appreciate it, Mr.
Appreciate
Smith.
it, man. Thank you so much. 888-SAY ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. We'll get back to your calls and more in just a minute before we close out the show. Right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. If you missed our interview today with Ryan Clark, by the way, go check out the entire interview on demand in the Stephen A. podcast, brought to you by the new Capital One Saver card. Earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment, 2% at grocery stores, and 1% on all other purchases. Hey, what's in your wallet? Back with more. Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Need game tickets? Find your seats at Vivid Seats.
Hey, what's up? It's Will Kane. Coming up right after Stephen A. Smith, join us on The Will Kane Show, live on ESPN Radio, SiriusXM Channel 80, and ESPN News.
Best of UFC on ESPN+. By the way, I'll be at that fight. I actually think they might have me doing some hosting duties there. By the way, breaking news for you also. The New York Jets have a new defensive coordinator. His name is Greg Williams. Excuse me. Former defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, who took over as interim head coach once Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley, the offensive coordinator in Cleveland, were relieved of their duties. I actually thought he did a damn good job and was worthy of strong head coaching consideration. But they decided to give it to Freddie Kitchens because he's got a good relationship with Baker Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick, and that is that. Nevertheless, no matter which way you slice it, it's going to be interesting to see how Adam Gase vibes with Greg Williams. But I think that Greg Williams, Bounty Gate and all, is a big-time defensive coordinator that infuses the kind of right attitude. Certainly not going to have a tolerance for softies. I think that will work very, very well with somebody like Jamal Adams. And I think the Jets are moving in a different direction and a forward direction because of it. So I kind of like it. I like Greg Williams as a part of the Jets. I like him as a part of the Jets as defensive coordinator more than I like Adam Gase. I tell you that much. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Stephanie. You're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Stephanie, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hey, I'm a lifetime Chiefs fan and a huge Eric Berry supporter. But my question is, he's played a handful of games these last 2 seasons because of injury, and I'm just wondering, because of the salary he commands, what are your thoughts on? Do you hold on to him and hope he can kind of overcome the injury issue?
I can't think about that right now, Stephanie, because I haven't seen him. I want to see him on the field. It would be nice if he could make it onto the field for the AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots at Arrowhead Stadium. Eric Berry, considering the challenges and the obstacles that he's faced and what he's had to overcome, it's an incredible, incredible story. And I am one of those individuals who strongly hopes and prays that he comes back, he plays well, and he wins himself a Super Bowl championship, because there's very few people in this world who deserves this more than him. So I'm rooting for him in that regard. Beyond this season, I don't know what kind of market there is for him. I don't know what he's going to be in a position to command, because battling cancer and then coming back and incurring the injuries that he incurred in the National Football League, they're looking for an excuse not to pay you. And definitely his health has handed that to them on a silver platter.
Right. Well, I'm with you. I hope he helps us bring it home. I'm a believer. I believe this year. But, I'd love to keep him. I don't know.
I'd love to keep him too. I just don't know how much he's going to be in a position to demand a command based on his health. We know he can play when healthy. When he's healthy, he's elite, and there's no way that Kansas City's defense would have been as bad as